Hello there, curious minds. Welcome back to the archives. I have been expecting you. Lightsaber combat is one of the most notable traits of any Jedi, Force wielder, and Sith, with lightsaber combat defining many outcomes of Force clashes behind the scenes for many thousands of years. Some notable lightsaber duels include the one between Obi-Wan Kenobi and General Grievous, Darth Sidious and Grandmaster Yoda, Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, and Luke Skywalker and Darth Sidious. Lightsaber duelists are some of the most active practitioners and beings to have ever graced the Star Wars galaxy. As well as being masterful in the Force, there are a multitude of beings who mastered the blade as well. However, today, we have recently pursued every crumbling stone tablet, every engravement on every tomb, and every holocron across the wide and vast galaxy, resulting and attributing to this list the most powerful and formidable lightsaber duelists to have ever existed. We have broken this up using a tier ranking list, manifesting a total of 6 tiers depicting 32 of the greatest lightsaber duelists in my opinion. Just one quick thing to note is that these duelists are based off of their lightsaber skill alone, and any Force abilities regarding potential, achieved Force power, and various other things and testaments including the Force will be completely discounted. We focus on the lightsaber abilities alone and their proficiency with the blade, and anything outside the lines of physical augmentation will be completely pointless in this debate. So my acolytes, adorn yourself in your Jedi robes, leave your lightsabers behind, for we are in the presence of true masters. Starting off at our 6th tier in E tier, we have decided to place Mother Talzin, Arcan and Thexan, as well as the Blade Master Kasim. I know a multitude of these characters are rather mysterious, and Mother Talzin may be propping up some confusion within the audience, but allow me to explain. Mother Talzin, while not wielding a lightsaber, was an exceptionally masterful and proficient duelist. Mother Talzin was capable of fighting Jedi Master Mace Windu to a stalemate, with Mace Windu tapping into his Shatterpoint ability in order to even get close to defeating her. Talzin also was able to possess the body of Dooku and fight against Darth Sidious, although Sidious mocked her, and disgraced that she possessed none of Dooku's skill despite possessing his body. Talzin was a formidable duelist, being able to hold her own against both Mace Windu and Sidious, who will appear later on this list. Overall, a multitude of Talzin's dueling feats are not actually presented, so we have to stop here, hence why she is in the last tier. Following this, we have Arcan and Thexan. Arcan and Thexan, born as the twin children of Valkorion, were actually, ironically, more proficient in the blade than their own father. Arcan and Thexan felled armies of both Jedi and Sith, with Arcan and Thexan being responsible for nearly more Jedi deaths than any being in galactic history. Arcan and Thexan, after receiving unique training by Valkorion and the Knights of Zakuul on Zakuul, took the galaxy by storm. They stormed Korriban, as well as a multitude of Jedi worlds, going unopposed, absolutely battering down every single being that they came across. They did it all with fierce precision and effortlessness. Their formidability was nigh unprecedented and nigh unrivaled for their time. Now, moving on, the last entry in Tier E is Kasim, a character who beings and readers of the Bay Knight trilogy would know very well. Kasim was the Blade Master that instructed Darth Bane personally on how to wield a lightsaber, ultimately teaching him on how to overcome the leader of the Academy in Sirac, and its primary and most gifted student. Blade Master Kasim later went toe-to-toe with an early version of Darth Bane, who had just come out of his apprenticeship, ultimately proving more than a match for the newly adorned Sith Lord. Kasim even proved too much for Bane, and Bane was eventually forced to retreat, using the Force to drop down a pile of boulders onto Kasim, burying him beneath a mountain of rock and ending the Blade Master. Now, we move on to Tier 5. The tier with the least amount of characters. This tier contains very many duelists, as many of these duelists fell between the category of the best and outright legendary. So let us proceed. To kick things off, we have decided to open with a bang with Obi-Wan Kenobi, Sin Dralig, King Adas, Starkiller, Jaina Solo Fell, and Plo Koon. All of these beings are accomplished duelists of their own right, and due to the fact there are a numerous amount of duelists in this category, we'll run through these pretty quick. Obi-Wan needs explanation. He had got to the point where he'd mastered his own form, Sarisu, to the point he was considered by Mace Windu the finest practitioner of the Form to have ever existed. Obi-Wan was capable of dueling against a Darth Vader who had previously dominated Starkiller Night effortlessly a year before the Battle of Yavin, fighting against Vader even in his old age, but eventually grew too fatigued. Even before, in Revenge of the Sith, he managed to fight against Vader. He was one of the few beings to have ever defeated General Grievous, ultimately bringing an end to the Cyborg General, and as well multiple times fought against the Zabrak Sith Lord and former Sith Lord Darth Maul, besting him almost every single time. Moving on, we have the Order's Blade Master, Sindralig, a character who needs some introduction. Sindralig was a blade master who was widely considered one of the most masterful duelists at the time, and was considered by Mace Windu as an accurate representation of the threat posed by Obi-Wan Kenobi and another Jedi, meaning Sindralig would be around this tier. Although this is highly speculative, as Sindralig was dispatched nigh effortlessly by Anakin. But this is important to note. Anakin was not conflicted as he was when he was fighting Obi-Wan, with Anakin being fully immersed in the dark side. Following this, we have King Adas. King Adas was a legendary Sith pure-blooded male who was born 3 meters tall, with charcoal black skin, and wielding one devastating black battle axe in each hand. Where do I even start with this character? King Adas quickly rose through the hierarchical ranks of the Sith. Being so powerful, he was proclaimed as the Sith Ari. King Adas was so masterful with his twin battle axes. He'd swarm off the hordes of Rakata invaders that invaded Korriban, driving them off, and even in his death, he drove over 300 Rakata away, permanently isolating them away from Korriban in fear Adas would return. Following this, we have Starkiller. Starkiller is a character who is mainly known for his raw force potential, but his lightsaber skills need to be credited too. He was capable of accurately dueling against Obi-Wan Kenobi via his droid Proxy, who imitated Obi-Wan's fighting combat abilities perfectly. He similarly fought against Vader, although he is clearly superior and inferior to Darth Vader, at least in Legends continuity. Skywalker also fought against Shak Ti, and was nearly bested by her, but ultimately prevailed. He would only get stronger by this in The Force Unleashed 2, where his clone, who was more powerful than the original Galen Marek, would go up against Darth Vader, ultimately losing, but eventually defeating the Sith Lord via his Force techniques. Following this, we have Jaina Solo, the Sword of the Jedi. Jaina Solo was a being who was exceptionally prodigious with the blade, and while nowhere near the skill and ability of her brother in Darth Caedus, Jaina Solo was capable of matching Caedus while empowered via Luke Skywalker, the most powerful Force user in history. Jaina Solo managed to hold her own against Caedus, and although Caedus was injured at the time and she was being amplified by Luke, Caedus himself was a formidable force, injured or not. And to cap off this tier, we have Plo Koon. Plo Koon was a being that many would not expect on this list. However, his feats speak for themselves. He was one of the only Jedi in the history of the Order who was considered one of the deadliest Jedi to have ever existed. Was considered by Darth Maul, alongside Mace Windu, holding them in higher regards to every other Jedi besides potentially Yoda. Plo Koon was regarded by Maul and earned his respect on reputation alone. Plo Koon even had rumours spreading that he was one of the only beings in all of galactic history to ever best Yoda in a duel, although it was likely a sparring session. Now, my friends, we move on to Tier 4, the tier that truly begins the heavyweights of the Sith and the Jedi. Now, let us proceed on with Tier 4, C tier. This tier we have managed to scramble approximately 11 duelists in this single tier alone, with many of these duelists falling in the category of the best and outright legendary. These duelists are truly the mark between the best of the best, such as we have seen in D and E tiers, and outright legendary unparalleled duelists that we will see in the succeeding tiers. With that, let us begin. Starting off with C tier with a bang, we have Ulic Qel-Droma, the man who went down in history as the only being to ever fight Exar Kun to a stalemate. Although we might have a different opinion on the blade work Exar Kun compared to Ulit Qel-Droma fought Exar Kun in battle for hours on end, with neither opponent gaining advantage of the other one. It should be noted that Exar did not have his double-bladed lightsaber, and likely would have won if he did. Nevertheless, Ulit Qel-Droma was stated by Exar Kun as the only being he ever considered and conceded to be his equal, a monumental statement from this powerful Dark Lord. Moving on, we have Dark Anakin Skywalker. We are going to differentiate Darth Vader and Dark Anakin. And when we say Dark Anakin, we will be prematurely only talking about Anakin before his suit. Fueled by the sudden steroids and power that is the dark side, Anakin Skywalker managed to plow through every Jedi in the Jedi Temple effortlessly, including Sindralik, who he placed in the previous tier. He plowed through Padawans and Masters alike, killed Shak Ti, nearly killed Joe Castanew, and a myriad of other Jedi. Dark Anakin felt almost more Jedi in this day than any single other in galactic history. He then went later on to fight Obi-Wan Kenobi on Mustafar, only losing due to a combination of being arrogant and also Obi-Wan knowing Anakin better. Moving on, we have Cade Skywalker. Cade Skywalker was an exceptionally masterful duelist, with Cade Skywalker widely considered as one of the greatest Jedi duelists ever. Cade Skywalker rivaled that of Darth Krayt, and when Darth Krayt was reborn, beat him in a lightsaber match fair and square, although I personally do agree and disagree with the fact that Krayt's lightsaber skills was superior to Cade's. Cade managed to defeat Darth Krayt, and only lost their second encounter due to the fact that Cade's mother shot a bullet into Darth Krayt's back, allowing Cade to escape. Moving on, we have a duo. We have Mara Jade Skywalker, Jason Solo, also known as Darth Kaitis. Mara Jade Skywalker and Darth Kaitis are rarely interchangeable, with Mara Jade being capable of dueling Darth Kaitis, in nearly getting the better of him using her mastery of Surisu and various other forms to her advantage. She was trained directly by Palpatine himself, and then later Luke Skywalker, her own husband. She nearly killed Kaitis, and would have killed him if he had not played a dirty trick and showed her an incoming vision of her son's death, startling her and allowing Kaitis to impale her. Kaitis was able to be the superior and to Jaina Solo Fell, who we mentioned previously while amplified by Luke Skywalker, and was even able to deal a critical assortment of wounds on Grandmaster Luke Skywalker during an actual duel, where the bloodlusted Grandmaster was going to kill Kaitis if he had not stopped. Following this, we have the Prodigal Knight Revan. Some might think that we have placed Revan quite low on our list. However, let's not discount what this list is for. Only the tip top of lightsaber duelists. Revan was remarked by Candoris Ordo, a general in the Old Republic era, as being the greatest warrior of his generation. He single-handedly slaughtered armies of Dark Jedi in the Dark Jedi temples on Korriban, as well as Sith acolytes. He even managed to defeat Mandalore the Ultimate, arguably the most skilled and formidable Mandalorian warrior ever in single combat. Was capable of standing up against his friend Darth Malak, even while he was empowered by the Starforge, an ancient Rakatan superweapon. Revan was capable of standing up against Malak, even eventually defeating him, and deciding the fate of the galaxy itself. Revan was so formidable, he was stated having a nigh undefeated combat record in the history of his 3 centuries long of lightsaber dueling. In no matter what, Revan would almost never surrender. Following this, we have a rather controversial placement, that being Darth Maul. Darth Maul is a very mysterious character, as well as his skill set specifically pertaining to lightsaber abilities. Darth Maul we can only place here due to associating him with one quote, whereas his fellow Dark Council members, the most powerful Sith at the time, regarded Darth Maul as more able and capable of defending a planet than a planetary defense shield, purely with his lightsaber. Based on many interpretations, Darth Maul very well could be placed higher. We have decided, due to the lack of feats from him, to place him in C tier. This is also an accurate representation for the following beings on our list, that being Kyle Katarn, Queller, Darth Sion, and Legends General Grievous. Kyle Katarn is regarded as one of the greatest lightsaber duelists in the history of the Jedi, with Kyle Katarn being able to go up against Darth Caedus, and was regarded by many, including Luke Skywalker, with Luke even praising Kyle's lightsaber abilities as perhaps even rivaling his own. Kyle Katarn and Mara Jade were the only two beings in the galaxy who were said to be Caedus' equal, with only Luke Skywalker being his superior at the time of Fate of the Jedi. Following this, we have Legends General Grievous. Legends General Grievous in canon was implemented by George Lucas to not be able to overshadow Vader, but in Legends, particularly the 2003 Clone Wars shorts, Grievous decimated every single being he came across. In the famous Battle of Hypori in the 2003 Clone Wars shorts, he effortlessly dominated 6 Jedi, including several members of the Jedi High Council. He killed Jedi Knight Shar-Gi and another Padawan, and ultimately then went on to defeat Ayla Secura, Shak-Ti, and the only being left standing was Ki-Adi-Mundi, only barely, as he was later disarmed and was forced to be rescued by a clone recon squadron. He was also stated by Dooku that if Grievous was on his best day, he had the capacity to even outshine Dooku as a lightsaber duelist, something we personally agree with here on the channel. Grievous's four-armed lightsabers and cybernetic implantations and modifications meant he was ambidextrous. He could swing his lightsabers in 360 degrees. He was capable of fighting against Kit Fisto, Eth Koth, Obi-Wan Kenobi on multiple occasions, proving his formidability. No matter what, no matter how bad the situation was, Grievous would never let up. He would not stop fighting until the person he desired was dead, or they had retreated. Moving on, we have Darth Sion, a rather controversial character. To be honest, Sion very well could have been placed in D tier, but I put him up in C tier for the pure reason he had an almost undefeated combat record. Sion used his various methods of living forever, with Sion channeling his pain and fury in a way he was capable of using the Force in order to preserve his body by keeping his decaying flesh together. Sion's lightsaber skills was Juyo, the Gem So, a pure ruthless acrobat. Darth Sion plowed through Jedi Knight effortlessly, with him going into battle openly seeking death. Darth Sion had a basically undefeated combat record, and he even proved to be the superior to Mitra Surik, the Jedi Exile, who would go on to best his own master Kreia, and ultimately had to be persuaded into giving up the dark side to finally be killed. Darth Sion, during the early stages of his career, met Jedi who were nothing to him. Even the most powerful of the Jedi, he could strike down just a few strikes. He never utilized anything less than a killing blow. Darth Sion was a being who would keep on fighting. Even if he was struck down, he would recompose himself. And above all else, Sion would resist, he would endure, and he would durabile any single strike until the opponent he was facing was absolutely and certainly dead. Finally, to cap off this tier, we have Quella, a rather mysterious and enigmatic character in the Star Wars community. Quella is a character who is very unique in the respect that he only appeared in one book, the 1996 novel The New Rebellion, set 13 years after Return of the Jedi. As a former Jedi protege of Luke Skywalker, Mara Jade, Luke, and Leia regarded Quella as all the most powerful student he had ever trained, eclipsing the power of both Mara Jade, Kyle Katarn, Kip Duron, and many others, and only being just shy of Darth Caedus in my eyes. Quella was capable of fighting in a lightsaber duel with a 36-year-old Luke Skywalker, who had pioneered his own variations of lightsaber combat, including the strong form. Quella, despite Luke being injured at the time, Luke injured is an incredibly formidable and nigh undefeatable being regardless, and Quella was capable of defeating him, disarming him, and beating Luke in the lightsaber duel, despite Luke being injured, conquering him every single time. Moving on, we have Tier 3. Kicking it off with a bang, we have decided to place Darth Sidious, Lord Nyax, Mace Windu, Darth Malgus, Bane, Dooku, and Krayt. Starting off with Darth Sidious needs no introduction in terms of Star Wars. He was the primary and overarching antagonist of the large majority of the plot and the story. From his very birth as a pure manifestation of the dark side, to his final death in 11 ABY, Darth Sidious, while permanently and most notably noted for his Force abilities, was a master of the blade. Palpatine noted that while he preferred to use his Force abilities, in the Book of the Sith, he described that once his lightsabers were activated, few could survive the fury that he commanded with his blades. Palpatine specialized in Naiman, utilizing a hybridized style of Juyo, Naiman, and various others, amplifying his own skill with Force speed, using utter precision and speed to absolutely conquer every single enemy he came across with near effortlessness. Everyone who challenged him was crushed. Everyone who opposed him was silenced. The only being that ever came close to defeating him and actually ended up disarming him was Grandmaster Yoda and Mace Windu. And even this Palpatine that Mace Windu lost to may have thrown the fight entirely. Palpatine is an exceptionally formidable lightsaber duelist, regarded by many as the most powerful Sith Lord ever. Palpatine mastered all 7 forms of lightsaber combat, regarded by his own master Darth Plagueis, who was an amazing lightsaber duelist in their own right, as being a master and the greatest Sith Swords master to have ever existed. Palpatine truly expended and idolized and truly mastered all 7 forms of this combat technique. Palpatine was ambidextrous, could modify his fighting style on a whim. Like General Grievous, he always left his opponents unsure of what his next move would be. He effortlessly ragdolled both with the Force using augmentation and with his lightsaber Darth Maul Zavajo pressed using Jar-Kai, showing his nigh unparalleled mastery of Jar-Kai dueling, surpassing that of even potentially Darth Krayt. He was capable of using the Force in order to telekinetically blitz through enemies, and looked like his enemies had been dispatched by a phantom. Palpatine was able to dispatch 3 highly decorated Jedi Masters in seconds: Kit Fisto, Sayasay Tin, and Aegon Kolar. All 3 of the highly powerful Jedi Masters of that era, who were all assigned by Mace Windu to, along with Mace, go on and attack Darth Sidious directly, challenging him for his power and taking him into custody. The closest thing we have ever got to seeing to Palpatine being bested was when he dueled Grandmaster Yoda, when Grandmaster Yoda disarmed Palpatine, forcing him to rely on his Force abilities, with Palpatine literally disarming himself and throwing his lightsaber away in order to move to a more advantageous and prevailed position in Force abilities, where he was more masterful than Yoda at. Palpatine was capable of applying various Force techniques such as Force Lightning into his combat maneuvers, and was capable of decapitating 6 Jedi prisoners brought before him into the Age of the Empire, with 1/6 swift single strike of crimson energy. Palpatine also dueled Darth Plagueis during his training session, besting him almost every time, even dueling an enraged and sleep-deprived Darth Maul, nearly killing him instantly. Palpatine was so formidable, he was regarded by many as the greatest Sith Swords Master to have ever existed. Palpatine was even able of contending with Grandmaster Yoda during the Clone Wars, during a vision where Palpatine fought Yoda, although Yoda eventually sort of put away his lightsaber in order to save Anakin Skywalker. Palpatine still de facto lost the duel. Next, we have Darth Nyax, beginning our quad of heavyweights. Nyax stands over 3 meters tall, over a meter taller than both Bane, Vader, and nearly a meter taller than Malgus. With 8 lightsabers emitting from his heavy protective armor, nigh immune to lightsabers, Nyax is more a hulking beast than a man, and wages an almost apocalyptic one-sided battle against a 44-year-old Grandmaster Luke Skywalker as well as a platoon of other Jedi. Nyax uses his AI-controlled lightsabers and prevents Luke from defeating him in close combat, with Nyax proving even more powerful in the Force than Luke at the time. Nyax uses his AI-controlled lightsabers in order to move them in feral ways, pouncing like a feral hog had not indulged itself in the honor of food after many months. Nyax pounced on his opponents, using his arms and legs as pure weapons, meat sticks, invulnerable shields of plasma. Nyax waved his lightsabers around like a mad dog, brutalizing any Jedi who came into his path. He was able to repel the attack strategy of Grandmaster Luke Skywalker and a strike team of other Jedi, proving his mastery with the blade. His AI-controlled lightsabers has been specifically stated as being stronger than Luke Skywalker at the time, with them being able to repel Luke Skywalker, with the AI-controlled lightsabers likely having immersed themselves in all 7 forms of lightsaber combat, memorizing each combat form to the purest extent it can be mastered in order to absolutely dominate Luke Skywalker as well as a squadron of other Jedi. Continuing, we have Mace Windu, a character who needs no introduction. Regarded as one of the greatest swordsmen the galaxy had ever seen, Mace Windu pioneered the modern version of a Pard, the most dangerous lightsaber form that was ever crafted in both Jedi and Sith tradition. Mace Windu crafted this along with Sora Bulk, who would eventually go on to defeat in a lightsaber duel due to the fact Sora had fallen to the dark side. He was even capable of contending with Depa Billaba, who had fallen to the dark side per the use of Vapad, who was stated that if Mace Windu had not been so immersed in Vapad, she would have likely bested him. He was even capable of going toe-to-toe with Darth Sidious, lasting far longer than Kit Fisto, Agon Kolar, and Sayasa Tin, with Mace Windu being the only one not cut down in a few seconds after the duel commenced. Mace Windu used Vapad as well as his Shatterpoint ability, tapping into both of them in order to perceive Palpatine's dark side energy, drawing it into a superconductive loop to empower himself, granting him Palpatine's dark side hatred, which was near limitless. Mace Windu used Vapad in order to redirect Palpatine's dark side energy, ultimately gaining the better of him, outright defeating him as various beings and novels have stated. Mace Windu kicks Palpatine's lightsaber out of the window to the Senate chambers, with Palpatine eventually forcing down into the floor. However, there is a multitude of debates that suggest that Palpatine actually threw the fight and was not actually fighting legitimately. Mace Windu has denied us the privilege of seeing his amazing blade work on screen often, but when he does, there are few, if any at all, who can withstand its fury. He can easily plow through armies of B2 and B1 battle droids with nigh effortlessness, was capable of using his lightsaber in order to combat Anakin Skywalker in the Lucasfilm-approved alternate continuity for the video game adaptation of Revenge of the Sith. Mace Windu is capable of using his lightsaber in tandem with his force abilities such as Shatterpoint to defeat Darth Sidious, fighting against a variety of other beings including Sora Bulk. Mace Windu even faced Count Dooku, the Jedi turned Sith, in a sparring session, ultimately proving to be his equal, and it was stated by the time of the Clone Wars. Even with Dooku's dark side amplification, Mace Windu, alongside with Yoda, were the only beings in the galaxy that could match him in a lightsaber duel. Continuing our quad of heavyweights, following this, we have Darth Malgus. Darth Malgus started off as nothing special in the ranks of the Sith Empire, just being an apprentice to the Sith pure-blooded man known as Vindicant, a Sith Inquisitor. However, Malgus certainly made a claim to fame on our list by absolutely decimating the Jedi Battle Master of his era, that being Cal Kendarach, a Zabrak Jedi Master, and despite his prevalence over Malgus's master Vindicant, impaling him through the chest, Malgus was capable of using Jar Kai while still just a Padawan to a higher degree that Cal Kendarach and Master Vindicant had ever seen. Using Jar Kai, he was capable of channeling the Force into durability strikes, using his durability to plow through a fuel engine. Malgus leapt through the flaming fire of the ruins of the fuel engine, and used his mastery of physical aspects and strength, speed, agility, force augmentation to utterly barrow down the defenses of Cal, quickly depriving him of one of his lightsabers before finally bisecting the Zabrak Jedi Master, before going on to finally finish Darth Vindicant. Malgus was also capable of dueling Sith Lord Adras, ultimately killing him using his superior mastery of the blade. Fought and killed Jedi Master Ven Zalo during the sacking of Coruscant, as well as plowing through armies and platoons of Jedi single-handedly. He was capable of using his lightsaber to fight against Masters, Padawans, and Knights simultaneously, and it was stated in the original canonized Death for Darth Malgus that Darth Malgus needed the greatest heroes the Jedi and the Sith had to offer, and the most powerful members of each of their order to overcome him in a duel, and even then he was caught off guard, and likely would have nearly succeeded if he had have been fully prepared for a fight. Darth Malgus quite literally embodied and personified the Gem So, the fifth form of lightsaber combat, and Juyo. He powered his strikes with every single bit of his strength, using force augmentation to fuel his immense physical power, his speed, his agility. Darth Malgus was stated to being so fast that a normal human could not comprehend his speed. He was capable of dueling Aaron Lena, the former Padawan of Ven Zallo, ultimately besting her. However, he decided to leave her alive due to the fact she had spared his lover, Alina Daru. Even as Malgus got older, he remained competent and was able to face Grandmaster Satele Shan in a lightsaber duel, ultimately proving to be the superior, while Satele Shan took the edge over Malgus in force abilities. Malgus' ferocity, as well as his overwhelming physical stature, allowed him to batter down defenses of most opponents. If his lightsaber was ignited, he poured his heart, body, and soul into every single strike. He would not allow his opponent a moment to breathe, believing that was disgraceful. Malgus was a Sith warrior who despised failure and detested wasting time even worse. And he, in his mind, allowing your enemy even an ability to regain their positioning and posture was something that no true combatant would ever do. Continuing our quad of heavyweights, we have Darth Bane, a character who needs very little introduction. While Darth Bane was primarily noted for his force abilities as well as his creation of the Rule of Two, it has come to our attention through the various datacrons we have analysed that Darth Kray's lightsaber abilities are grossly overlooked and underestimated when considering the finest duelists who have ever emerged from the Star Wars galaxy. Darth Bane, even early, arose and ascended through the Sith ranks on Korriban. However, he started off as nothing special, being beaten by his rival Sirak, a Zabrak Sith Lord, who is exceptionally formidable in both the Force and in lightsaber dueling, using a saber staff. Bane also used the Force to augment his physical abilities. He was the pure embodiment of Anakin and Obi-Wan mixed together, who we have mentioned previously, a pure combination of both the Gem So's overpowering physical strikes and the pure defense that Sarisu maneuvers and that it holds. Darth Bane was capable of dueling against Kasim, one of the Order's finest swordsmen, if not the finest that had existed till that point. Kasim, who we mentioned previously, with Bane being unable to literally pin down the Twi'lek Sith Master, ultimately having to resort to his Force abilities. However, as Bane continued to progress and his training continued to continue, Darth Bane became a master of both Sarisu and the Gem So. He used the Gem So in overwhelming power strikes, using his strength from working in the mines on Apatros for multiple years to his advantage, battering down the defenses of his opponents nigh effortlessly. Bane was capable of combating himself against 5 Jedi simultaneously, while these Jedi were being amplified by a Rodian Jedi's battle meditation, mind you. Darth Bane used Sarisu maneuvers in such explicit and masterful fashion that Darth Bane was capable of walking out into a perpetual lightning storm and rain storm, that Darth Bane was capable of maneuvering his Sarisu mastery in such a way. He was capable of entering after a 20-minute practice brutal training session completely dry, deflecting every little bit of rain that had fallen on him in a mere instant. In 20 minutes, not a single drop of rain had scathed Darth Bane. It should be noted that this rain was acid rain and would have killed Darth Bane most likely if he had been exposed to even one drop, with it likely hindering his actual abilities overall. Darth Bane was even able to stand up to his apprentice Darth Zana, ultimately proving to be superior in the blade, with Darth Zana having to play a dirty trick by using Sith sorcery, an aspect of the Force Bane was quite unfamiliar with, in order to prevail over her master. Continuing, we have Count Dooku, who stakes his claim on this tier as the most elegant, graceful, and masterful practitioner of Makashi ever, the dueling-centric variant of form of lightsaber combat. Count Dooku was widely regarded as one of the greatest swordsmen the galaxy had ever seen. Count Dooku, while fatigued and blind, was capable of using the Force in order to sense beings around him, such as Ventress and 2 other Night Sisters. Using it to his advantage, he was able to effectively combat them at once, overcoming Makashi's most lethal weaknesses, that being its lack of ability against multiple foes, and that its lack of ability to deflect blaster fire. both of which Count Dooku eventually found compensations for. Count Dooku was able to use Makashi very much like a fencer, and was described as almost looking like he was dancing, maneuvering himself in such a unique posture. He was regarded as one of the greatest swordsmen the galaxy had ever seen. Dooku swirled his lightsaber in articulate and precise arcs, always intending to hit their mark. Dooku stood toe-to-toe with Master Yoda on Geonosis, forcing the Grandmaster into a stalemate, and ultimately forcing Darth Sidious, his own master, into considering his own lightsaber skills in comparison to Dooku's and Mace Windu's. Dooku also bested Mace Windu in a friendly sparring session, although it should be noted that Mace Windu was not near the height of power that he would eventually get to. Then again, neither was Dooku. Dooku also fought against Mace Windu during the events of the Clone Wars. Dooku combating Mace during a fusion and attack on a distant planet where the Separatists and the Republic were warring with one another, with Dooku ultimately stalemating the Vapad amplified Master of the Order. Dooku was such an elegant practitioner of Makashi. He was capable of going toe-to-toe with Grandmaster Yoda himself in his peak of power, amplified by the dark side. He had been personally taught by Yoda, although Yoda would eventually prove to be a superior in the art of the blade. There are few beings who can match the grace, the elegance, and the pure, unrivaled skill that a fencer commonly wears of Count Dooku. Finally, capping off this tier and our quad of heavyweights, we have Darth Krayt, a notorious being in the Legends timeline. Darth Krayt was a being who lived for over 180 years. Darth Krayt was born in 47 BBY, a few years before Anakin Skywalker was born, and lived until 137 ABY. Darth Krayt was an exceptionally formidable being, claiming to have slaughtered hundreds upon thousands of opponents since the era of the Clone Wars while he was a Sith Lord. Darth Krayt was capable of combating against the much younger Cade Skywalker, and would have killed the young Skywalker if he had not been backstabbed and been shot in the back by Cade's mother, who sacrificed herself, allowing Krayt to lose. Ultimately, Krayt's track record is nigh undefeated. And even before he became a Sith, he was capable of dueling the ex-Jedi Hunter Aurra Sing, with Aurra Sing having prevailed over Het's father, a fully trained Jedi Knight, an impressive feat since Het at the time was merely a Padawan. During his exile after the events of Order 66, and during Order 66, Het claimed hundreds upon thousands of clone troopers' lives, slaughtering and massacring them nigh effortlessly using his mastery of Jar Kai. Order 66 exterminated the large portion of the Jedi Order, and Het was able to resist this, buttering down the ranks of the clone troopers that he had served alongside for the past 4 years. Darth Krayt used Force augmentation to augment his movements, being an elegant practitioner of both Nine Man Judo, implying this into Jar Kai dueling, arguably being the greatest Jar Kai duelist to have ever existed, with his only rival being that of Malgus and Palpatine. Darth Krayt was capable of fighting against the much younger Cade Skywalker to a stalemate, and though was ultimately prevailed over by Cade Skywalker, his pure skill and experience, in my opinion, eclipses that of Cade, and is hence why he is in the tier above him. Krayt was also capable of, even before accepting the dark side into his heart, contending with Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, who was in tier 5. Darth Krayt fought Obi-Wan Kenobi as a mere Tusken Raider clan leader, with Het using his Force abilities, primarily his skill with the lightsaber, in order to hold his own against Obi-Wan, although he was eventually conquered and defeated. Darth Krayt was so unimaginably skilled with the lightsaber, even while infected with Yuzong Vong parasites, which was stated to dampen his physical strength and his combative ability, forcing him to rely on time and stasis in order to heal from severe wounds. Darth Krayt was capable of fighting against and killing 4 Imperial Knights in quick succession, effortlessly. Was capable of fighting against Abeloth in a duel, ultimately alongside Grandmaster Luke Skywalker prevailing over her. Krayt's combat record is nigh undefeated. He effortlessly slammed and impaled Darth Wylock through his use of Jar Kai, dominating the Sith Lord who had previously slain the Sith Lord Darth Andetti's spirit, sundering it from the physical world and banishing it into the void of chaos. Until his last duel with Cade Skywalker, Darth Krayt remained one of the most fierce combatants the galaxy had ever seen. And now, my friends, we enter Tier 2. To give you a quick snapshot, we have only decided to put 2 characters in all of the lore in Tier 1, one to embody the light and the other the dark. My friends, Join us in Tier 2, as we have welcomed exceptionally formidable lightsaber combatants. Join us in welcoming Legends Darth Vader, Reborn Emperor Palpatine, Exar Kun, and Master Yoda. I know what you're thinking, Acolytes. Wasn't Palpatine in Tier 3? Well, yes, my friends, but you have to understand, this is purely the Dark Empire variation, where Palpatine, no longer inhibited by old age, was able to completely embarrass a Grand Master Luke Skywalker in a lightsaber duel. This Palpatine was no way inhibited by old age, such as the Palpatine Luke encountered on the second Death Star was, reborn in a new, fit, and powerful clone body with all the knowledge and power of the original Palpatine. Palpatine took the galaxy by storm, dominating Luke Knight effortlessly in their first lightsaber duel, disarming him like one would toss a child's candy away, and only barely lost their second encounter due to the fact that Luke was amplified and augmented by Leia's Force harmony, giving him a stronger connection to the Force and augmenting his power. Palpatine was eventually disarmed. However, he was also capable of fighting Grandmaster Yoda to a stalemate, incredibly proficient feat. Palpatine is widely regarded as one of the greatest Sith Swords Masters of all time, and his showing in Dark Empire purely displays this. Moving on, we can confidently say that the next candidate in Tier 2 is Legends Darth Vader. Darth Vader in Legends continuity, strictly from Legends continuity, has to fall into this class. In canon, they normally had to dumb down his insane levels of power and combative ability to fit certain stories, so that Vader did not dominate the battlefield every single time. However, in Legends continuity, there was no way that Obi-Wan Kenobi would have ever been able to stand up to the might of Vader. Vader completely plowed through every single enemy that he came across, felling more Jedi than almost every other being in galactic history. Darth Vader used the Force in such mysterious ways. He realized shortly after being imported into his suit that his old way of fighting as Anakin would never work again, and quickly and swiftly realized that he would have to use his armor rather than rebel against it. He did not try to continue his other method of fighting. He molded it. He molded it into the perfect practitioners of all forms of lightsaber combat. Darth Vader was simply perfect. Darth Vader started off by mastering the form of Djem So, taking it into account as he had as Anakin, continuing his mastery with the form, using his bulky, heavy-lifting cybernetics and prosthetics in order to be able to utterly dominate beings who were less experienced and less adequate with blade work with just a few simple strokes, with him being even able to kill a Jedi in one single strike, after uncovering a secret Jedi movement evolving in the galaxy during the time of the Empire. Darth Vader was capable of fighting against Obi-Wan Kenobi, forcing him into fatigue, ultimately killing him. Darth Vader was so powerful and so masterful in the blade, he was capable of fighting against Vac Andor, an incredibly powerful being who was able to outclass Mace Windu all across the board, and was directly compared to Yoda's level of power in all actuality. Darth Vader was capable of using his mastery of Judo, mastering it as a Sith Lord as the main combat style that he would use alongside Djem So, molding it into a perfect variation and hybridized fighting form. Alongside this, Darth Vader also reminded and mastered the pure defense of Sarisu, knowing to fall back on defense whenever he needed to, in order to allow and remain cool, calm, and collected. This allowed Vader to continue fighting, falling back on his defense, and then pressing his overwhelming offense, almost never losing a single lightsaber duel. Above all this, he paired this with the blade work and footwork of Markashi, mastering it as much to the level of Count Dooku, using his elegancy and power in order to batter down the defenses of his opponent in composed blades, mixing the blade work of Markashi, the precision it holds, with the strength of Djem So. Darth Vader, while was unable to lift his arms barely above his head, was perfect. He had learned one last lesson from both his masters, Count Dooku and Obi-Wan Kenobi, his two greatest masters over the course of the Clone Wars. Anakin had learned one final lesson. He paired this all 7 forms with the blade work of Nightman, mastering all forms and their primary combative abilities. And with that, he was perfect. A pure abomination, a vergence of the dark side energy, a pure encapsulation of Jedi death. Vader stormed through every single person he ever fought, dominating Luke Skywalker on Bespin, and only lost due to being conflicted and Luke being amplified by the dark side on the second Death Star. Personally, if Vader had not been conflicted, he would have absolutely wiped the floor with Luke on the second Death Star and the Saber Door. Personally, I believe that if Vader fought Sidious, he would most likely win 9 times out of 10. With that out of the way, we now move to the legend himself, Master Yoda, confidently placing him in the second tier. Master Yoda retains this rank by default, being the greatest practitioner of Ataru to ever exist. Master Yoda had an impressive nigh undefeated combat record, with some even arguing it was undefeated. Master Yoda was capable of exerting his power in lightsaber combat to the point he could plow down armies of B-1 and B-2 battle droids effortlessly. He was capable of contending with Mace Windu and Count Dooku, disarming the latter in a lightsaber duel twice, forcing Count Dooku, even though being amplified by the dark side, to a stalemate on Geonosis. Master Yoda was the most proficient practitioner of the Form 4 variant of Ataru to ever exist. He realised that with his small petite form, no average form would ever do, and using his unique physique, he mastered Ataru, greater than any other being that had ever existed. Master Yoda paired his small stature with unmatched agility, acrobatics, and mastery of acrobatics, as well as speed, precision, in order to utterly dominate his opponents. He fought against Mace Windu and won. He fought against Count Dooku and won. He even disarmed Darth Sidious himself, arguably the most powerful Sith Lord of all time. He was able to use his lightsaber. Palpatine, the Revenge of the Sith novelization, even conceded and stated that he even threw his lightsaber away. He originally tried to run from Yoda, tried to get into a more advantageous and appropriate position, knowing he would not likely last against the seasoned and wizened Grand Master. Palpatine would prove correct, as Palpatine would once know, and would eventually find out, though he had mastered all 7 forms of lightsaber combat to the highest degree. He was no match for the being who would intensely study his own combat form for over 800 years. And as the two beings arise and ascended on the Senator's podium and the Supreme Chancellor's podium into the Senate building, Palpatine's anger began to show when he was quite literally completely unable to pin down the Ataru acrobatics and skill of the old wizened Grand Master. Even into his exile, Yoda remained arguably one of the greatest, if not undisputedly the greatest Jedi duelist of all time, being able to disarm Luke Skywalker during one of their practice saber sessions on Dagobah, nigh effortlessly, despite not having used his lightsaber in quite some time. He was capable of fighting against a being using a lightsaber, having a day-and-a-half long duel with someone who was stated to be on the skill level of Darth Vader, but had none of his control. Darth Vader was in his own right on this tier. Master Yoda certainly belongs on this tier, rivaling even the greatest swordsmasters to have ever existed. And finally, capping off tier 2, we have the legendary Exar Kun, the man who forever carved himself into the pages of history as the inventor of the double-bladed lightsaber. Exar Kun started off as a master, claimed by Vodosios Bas, who he almost defeated on multiple separate occasions. Exar Kun, despite his immense feats and skill, only was in a handful of lightsaber duels in his life. Nevertheless, he won them all. The closest thing we've ever seen to Exar even losing or drawing was during his duel with Ulic Qel-Droma. However, Exar only used a single blade at this time, and if he had used his double-bladed lightsaber, no one could stop him. He was regarded by not only just the Jedi, but the Sith alike, as the greatest lightsaber duelist that had ever existed. He paired his double-bladed lightsaber techniques with Nyman, and with that, he was the master, the ultimate blade master of the history of the Sith Order. He was the pure avatar of the lightsaber. He used a double-bladed lightsaber, and even if altering slightly the course and length of his blades by a singular millimeter, he threw his opponents off guard, allowing for fatal counterstrikes, impalements, dismemberments, and maiming. Exar Kun quite literally embodied lightsaber combat itself. He practiced Nyman and mastered it. He used his double-bladed lightsaber and quite easily disarmed and defeated Vodosios Bas, his own master, in the Senator's podium. Palpatine even regarded Exar Kun as one of the greatest Sith swordsmen of all time. Exar Kun arguably could be in the next tier, and is most likely at the highest rank in this tier. However, we have decided to cap him off as the most powerful and greatest lightsaber duelist in tier 2. Now, my acolytes, our moment has come. Let us indulge ourselves in who truly are the masters of the blade, the avatars of lightsaber combat. Multiple candidates could have sailed to this position, with most likely Exar Kun and Legends Darth Vader being the closest to ebbing themselves and sneaking their way into tier 1. However, in terms of my view, the candidates that have been selected for this tier were always so clear. We have selected merely two primary avatars, one to personify the light and one to embody the dark. We have selected these two beings on the basis that both of them have feats of exerting their lightsaber control and felling entire armies, massacring Jedi, Yuzong Vong, Sith, and countless others. The only avatars that we deemed worthy in our attempt to create balance in this tier is Grandmaster Luke Skywalker and Tulak Horde. While most of Tulak Horde's combat records are rather mysterious, as he is as a character overall, there are a multitude and a plethora of unique eyewitness accounts and combat records that depict Tulak Horde's brilliance. Darth Krayt, who was also the teacher of Revan, Sion, who we mentioned in the previous tiers, as well as Darth Nihilus, one of the most powerful Sith Lords in history, stated that Horde Seal was considered absolutely remarkable for his time, further going on to state that he was considered the greatest lightsaber duelist of the Sith Lords, where many true masters actually lived during this era. This is impressive and nigh unopposed when it goes to consider what Krayt thought of the Sith Lords of this era, stating to Mitra Surik, the Jedi exile, who went on to contend with Darth Sion and Darth Nihilus. She stated that if Mitra Surik was to face an ancient Sith Lord in combat, she would learn that we are children playing with toys compared to the prowess of the old masters. By this account, Tulak Horde is easily the greatest Sith lightsaber duelist to have ever existed. Tulak Horde single-handedly broke 2 Jedi sieges, and his primary general Kem Val, his primary general and warfare tactician, noted that he broke 2 Jedi sieges single-handedly, and according to him, over 1,000 Jedi lay dead in the aftermath of these battles, all killed personally by Tulak Horde, with him driving his Crimson Blade into every single one. This is ridiculous in Star Wars lore. Characters before like Exar Kun and Darth Vader have feats of using lightsabers to slaughter Jedi, with Darth Malgus and Darth Krayt also being masterful in the blade. However, no one, not one lightsaber duelist, has ever killed thousands of Jedi in 2 battles. Not one. Not even Luke, not even Vader, not Exar, not Yoda, not Sidious. Only Tulak Horde. Tulak Horde was so formidable in the blade that his apprentice was so fearful of challenging him to assail past him, he literally had to stab him in the back in the aftermath of a battle, where Horde was already tired and not attuned to his apprentice's doings. And if he had not have, Tulak Horde likely would have continued to exist as a pure embodiment of the dark side and the wrath that a lightsaber blade can accomplish. Now, let's move on to Tulak Horde's light side counterpart, Grandmaster Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker defeated Darth Sidious from Dark Empire, reborn in a younger clone physique. Luke Skywalker then went on in his peak of power to defeat and slaughter armies of Yuzong Vong, massacring hundreds upon thousands of Yuzong Vong, a species which is naturally resistant due to their biological armor to lightsabers and the Force in general, due to them being cut off from it thousands of years prior. Luke Skywalker slaughtered armies of them, being one with the Force, tearing through them in the final battle of Yuzan Tar. He then went on to defeat and contend with Shimara Jamain. This being was the leader of the Yuzong Vong, influenced by Onimi, who was killed by Darth Kaitis. Luke killed him, and despite the fact he was poisoned, he was still regarded as the greatest warrior and combatant, single-handedly, that the Yuzong Vong had ever seen. a species that had existed for potentially hundreds of thousands of years before the Star Wars galaxy ever came into existence. Luke Skywalker also came on to defeat 5 Slayers, formidable entities in their own right, while Kip Duron, being on par with Kyle Katarn in the Force, and someone who could very well have made it onto the last tier, albeit barely, was regarded as not being able to take on 1 Slayer, while Luke could slaughter 5. Kip Duron, one of the most powerful Jedi of that era on par with Mara Jade and Kyle Katarn, could not even assail 1. Luke Skywalker further goes on to contend with Abeloth like Darth Krayt. Luke Skywalker's lightsaber defeats are so ridiculous and unfathomable. It was stated that when he became one with the Force, he was using up to 30 lightsabers at a single time, acting as dozens of Jedi simultaneously. And this came from his fellow Jedi, proud beings who served under Luke and regarded themselves as immensely powerful beings. And even they feared the wrath of this Grand Master, Luke at his absolute peak of power, likely around the events of Fate of the Jedi, or perhaps a bit lower. Luke was regarded by his Jedi comrades as in his peak of power, wielding up to 1,000 lightsabers at a single time. This outclasses perhaps every single being assigned to Tulak Horde. Luke Skywalker unquestionably belongs in Tier 1. But my friends, there is one thing we have to take into account. George Lucas himself noted that Luke Skywalker not only became the most powerful Force user and Jedi to ever exist, he also became the most powerful Jedi lightsaber duelist to ever exist, outclassing Yoda, Cade Skywalker, Mara Jade, Kyle Katarn, Jaina Solo, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Sindralig, and even his own father in Anakin Skywalker. Luke Skywalker barely lost a lightsaber duel. He was stated more powerful than ever before a year after the events of Dark Empire, meaning he was already stronger than Sidious at that time. Luke Skywalker is undisputedly perhaps the greatest lightsaber duelist on this entire list, with his only rival being Tulak Horde. Well, my acolytes, my friends, my students, what did you think of this tiered ranked list? Did you enjoy the list like I have? And are you excited to do more content? This was a rather long video, and if you desire to watch more content like this that is much longer and extensive in length, then let me know in the description down below. Anyway, my friends, I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. Draw your lightsabers, and remember, kneel before the dragon of Zakul, and I'll see you in the next video.